you have a light to face all your life. Do you have us on there now?
You are actually on here now.
Oh no.
Oh,
we have
no.
you committing
You
your love to your wife.
are such handsome devils. Now Tressa's on there now.
Oh, not showing this.
Oh, this is
I'll
great.
get you.
Don't worry. Now we're looking. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just want
Are you
to
interviewing?
know.
No, just talk. You talk and we'll ask questions.
The worst of it is, you see us, and we haven't clued it as to who we're talking to.
You're just talking to the kids.
You're just talking to me, talking to your
posterity.
talking, you know. This will probably end up in the church archive, so don't worry about it.
I'll tell you that I think the most important thing in our lives is our posterity.
Little
And
Madeline
to, oh,
won't, maybe by the time she's old enough to
Or
get
Austin.
to know
We
you.
don't know
Or
that yet.
Austin.
we're so
We'd like
looking
to hear
forward.
about when you walked with dinosaurs and what it was like in the olden days.
Yeah.
So tell us about your great-great-grandmother.
You know what we've already told you. When you've asked about the olden days, we've said, well, we don't know. We didn't live in the olden days. We're here with you now.
That's why I'm saying, tell us about your great-great-grandparents, and
That's
then
what
we'll
I
know
thought
what
of-
the olden days
That's
were.
what I thought about my grandmother. And then I read her life history and found out that she used to fight Indians as a child.
Fight them.
Yes.
I
And you
want
see, I know her as a sweet little old lady that grew geraniums.
I
Not-
want you to know
the Indian
that
part.
I think I like dinosaurs. I used to ride one to school. Do we have to
They
tell the
want
truth
the
all
true
the
story.
time? Okay, I'll tell the true story. I want my wife to know that I love her above all things. And that is the truth, even if I didn't ride a dinosaur to school.
Okay, tell us how you met each other. Tell us about growing up and when you became aware of Edna Richards Baker.
Oh, I remember her when she was just a little girl growing up, and I kept wishing that that she had an older sister. Then I went away to school for a couple of years, and when I came back, guess what? She had grown up. Boy, did she appeal to me. I taught school in one room, and she was in high school in another. But we had a chance to see each other often. In fact, we would go in the gymnasium and after school with
My teacher.
with her teacher and his wife. We'd go in and play badminton.
The two of
An
you
hour or two.
and the other.
Four
You
of
play
us.
what?
Four
Badminton?
of us. We'd
Were there no problems with ethics back then with you being interested in a student? See, if that were to happen today,
Well,
big problems.
the thing was, they cast us in a 3-act play together. Every fall, every winter, our ward put on a 3-act play, and every other ward around did too. And then we'd perform in our ward, and then we'd travel to the other wards, and that was the entertainment, mostly for the winter. That and dances. So the first year that he was home from school, we were cast in the leading roles.
Really?
And that's the year that we started dating.
And what was the play?
Little Flower of the Hills, and I was the flower.
And what was he?
Well, he was the young man that came along and had an important part of my life. Sort of tamed this little incorrigible.
Did that happen in real life? Did he ever tame you?
Oh,
I didn't know that at the time that we were on public view courting or starting our love affair, but that's what started it, I guess. And it's grown and grown from till this very day. So
Okay,
I
so
do
you-
love you all. We weren't going to talk about that.
Okay, before you go back into your ancestors, tell us about when you got married and how you lived, about the turkeys. He doesn't know anything about the turkeys and the sheep, and how I was raised, and then we'll go back into the grandparents.
oh, we haven't got that far yet. If you started out with us and our growing up,
Okay.
let us finish that.
Sure, absolutely.
Right, okay, yes.
The next year they cast us in the leading roles of the play again. That year also made us ward dance directors. so we had to go into Cardston every week and learn the dances so that we could come out to our ward and teach them to the young people for the green and gold ball. Green and gold balls were wonderful at that time. It wasn't segregated like it is today. We had both the young and the old together, and it was wonderful to have those. And in the middle of the dance, they would have this green and gold demonstration dance that the kids had been working on and performing for ages.
So
Anyway.
we not only got a chance to dance together, but we had to teach the other people how to dance together, to do it properly. So we were dance instructors there for a while. That was a good start for us.
Yeah, and then when we dated for about 2.5 years, they called, the bishop wanted him to go on a mission. And he talked to me about it.
And how old were you at this age?
Oh, 100 years? No. No, I was, what,
23.
23.
And I was, oh no, he was 23 when we started dating. When we started dating, I was only 17.
Mm-hmm.
By this time, I was 19 and he was 25. But he said he sort of thought he'd like to get married this fall if it was agreeable with a certain young lady. That's the way he put it. You know, your dad doesn't come right out forthright and say what he means.
Whichever young lady he happened to find available.
Yeah.
Sure, leaving it open.
So anyway.
She was available, right? A high school girl in the next room, and we had a chance to see each other. I had a horse that would carry two, and I'd take her to a dance every once in a while, not every night, but every month or so I'd have a date. But I had to go down horseback for about 3-4 miles to get her, bring her
There
to
were no
dance.
cars?
She was a mile away from the dance.
They had a car, but they had about 7 boys in the family.
Okay.
Anyway, so he asked me how I felt about it, and I said I thought that was great. He should go on his mission, and maybe I'd go on a mission too. So he went in September of 1938, and I talked to the bishop and tried to get to go then, but President Grant turned me down. He said that I wrote a letter to my bishop and said that I was not old enough to serve a mission. That sometimes parents want young girls to go on a mission to get them away from a wild young man at home, and sometimes that wasn't the best idea. The best time for a girl to be married was between the age of 19 and 21, according to President Grant. So my bishop showed me the letter, and we were both a little upset. He took it to President Wood, our state president, and President Wood wrote a personal letter to President Grant and said this young lady is mature enough to serve a mission, and she's engaged to a young man who is in the mission field. And so President Grant wrote back and said, inasmuch as she has been refused, we will wait for a year, and if she still wants to go on a mission, she can go then. So as soon as I had my 20th birthday, I was called on a mission to Eastern Canada.
And
He was serving the northern states.
and how long was your mission?
Oh, my mission was the regular 2 years.
2 years, okay.
And
And yours would have been the 18 months?
Yeah. So
before I left, I said, I hope you're still here and available when I get home. But guess what? I'd been out there a year when she got her call, and her mission was just across the border from where my mission was, in the northern states. My mission president was Bryant S. Hinckley, father of President Gordon B. Hinckley now. Anyway, we were called to serve as missionaries, you won't believe this, as a quartet. We had a quartet, and we were invited to go to different wards and put on programs, sing over the radios, and give talks over the radio about our church, which we did.
the business meetings.
But the important thing right now was that we were just across the border. At one time, she heard that the Northern States Mission Quartet was going to be across the line, and they were holding district conference, so she arranged for the quartet to come and sing at their district conference.
And over the radio station in our city.
That's true, which we did one Sunday. And that was lovely. Meet her again. And,
Wow.
Were you writing to each other this whole time?
Oh, yeah.
oh, just occasionally. But the next day was P-Day for missionaries. We were free to go and do extra things that we didn't usually do on Preparation Day. And her mission president gave us authority to, for all the missionaries to go, or for us to go down to Niagara Falls. Now that's where newlyweds go on their honeymoon, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he said you can't go alone, but if all the missionaries would go, and don't leave them together 1 minute alone, then we get down to Niagara Falls and enjoy that. So
We went by streetcar from St. Catharines to Niagara Falls. It was only 14 miles.
that's an unusual experience for a missionary to see his sweetheart.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so we said goodbye, and I never saw her again for about nearly a year after that.
Anyway, we came home and he waited for me I waited for him for a year, and then he waited for me for 6 months after he got home. And here we are today. Anyway, we were married on July 23rd, 1941, on my 22nd birthday. And we have 6 wonderful children. We won't tell you all the details of our struggles and strifes.
Well, we'd like to hear some of that.
Sure.
How you-
Give a few examples of how bad Tressa was as a daughter.
She was the cutest thing ever was.
They
in this
wouldn't
life.
go get me though until tell them about that.
I'll tell you the beginning of it. We were struggling to build a home at that time, and
A home in Cardston
in Levitt.
and Levitt.
We'd I
Now,
taught
Levitt's in
taught
Alberta,
school.
right?
Pardon me.
Levitt's in Alberta.
Oh yes, I taught school for a year after we were married in Orion, and at the end of that school term, my brother Grant wrote me a letter, or no, it was a telephone call. He called me and said, "Would you come home to the farm and help Father on the farm? I just got my call to go to the Army. Can't leave Father alone on the farm." Well, that was quite a question to answer. Would you come and farm now instead of teaching school? Well, I finally decided to, but we had no home to live in. We lived with our parents for a year and a half while we built a lovely home about a mile from there. And
To
what
build
else?
that home, he spent his winter up in the timber getting out logs and having them sawed to get the boards to build the home. And Father gave us a pig, a sow pig.
Cool.
And when she had her first litter of pigs, when they were big enough to be sold, we sold them and used the money to buy cement to run the basement for that new home. And then the ward turned out and helped, and they put up the frame and framed it all in. And then we finished 2 little rooms in the basement to live in, kitchen and a bedroom. And when the day I came home from the hospital with Tressa, we moved into that little home. And I thought I was the happiest girl in this whole world. I had a husband I was just in love, head over heels in love with. And I had a little boy and a little girl. And I thought I had it all. Anyway, but we didn't have any money. And he wasn't teaching school. He couldn't teach school and help Father on the farm too. We were taking over 2/4 sections of land from his father. And so we were planning how we could make a living. And I sat down, he was working with a construction company at the time, just off and on. And I sat down one day and I tried to figure out how we'd make some money. I thought about raising chickens and selling eggs. There wasn't enough money in that, so I thought about turkeys. And it worked out beautifully on paper. We could make lots of money raising turkeys. When he came home, I was all excited and told him, and he said, "You know, when I used to go down to Mandi to see our relatives while I was going to BYU, I'd go through Gunnison, and they're big turkey farms down there. Well, by this time he was in the bishopric, and he got a chance to go to conference every third conference. We went down to conference, we saw this turkey ranch, we went on down to Manti, stopped in Gunnison, and did some exploring. We got more excited about raising turkeys. So we went back and wrote his brother Lervais. Lervais was in the Air Force making some money. We said, Lervais, will you take a chance on us? Will you let us borrow money to get into the turkey business? And he agreed. And he gave us $4,000. And we built this year, just one big long turkey house, 100 feet long and 16 feet wide, divided it in 16 divisions, ordered six divisions, ordered 1,500 turkey poles, and got into the turkey business. So that's where we did well.
Describe how you had to take care of those turkeys.
Yeah, describe this. This sounds interesting.
I
Each
think
little
we better
section
forget
had its
about that.
little heater, little
Yeah,
furnace.
we had the little heater with the hood around it, and we divided the turkeys up in these 6 pens, and we didn't know one thing about raising turkeys, so we subscribed to a turkey magazine on raising turkeys. And we studied that thing. We played marbles with them. We'd put little bright shiny marbles in the feed to teach them. They'd peck at the marbles and get some feed, and in the water so that they could find. They're very stubborn little things. We had to hand dip them first, every one of them, to give them a drink so that they understood. It was really fun.
They would crowd together to get warm and suffocate each other.
Yeah, we had
I've
to.
heard so many stories about how dumb turkeys were, that when it rained, they'd look up at the rain and drown, and that they'd all jump in a barrel and kill each other.
If they get
Let
wet.
let me tell you how dumb they are. It was stormy one night, in the middle of the night, I believe, or just as night.
Wind came.
And I thought, oh, I didn't shut the windows today, so I dashed up. This was after the turkeys had gone to bed, around each stove, and I went up and shut the windows, 6 windows there, and I thought I'd taken care of them, and I did. But the next morning I went up, and there were
220.
220 dead turkeys. As soon as I
Came
went
to the
up there,
door.
they all ran out to meet me and settled around the door or the window, and I turned the light off and dashed home. I never thought that they didn't know enough to go back to bed. Anyway,
Back
the
to
next
feeder.
morning,
Oh, so they got cold.
No, they
and-
were by this time
they
about
were
6
by the
weeks old. They
window
were
and
roosting.
all piled up in a pile. About 200 wasn't there? Died.
We even thought we had to teach them to roost. We'd go out about dusk and we'd sit on the roosts and just sit on there and wait for them to come and sit by us. And when they all quieted down, we'd slip out and go. We
Turn the
didn't know
lights
any better.
on. Anyway,
Worse than a baby.
the moral of that story is don't raise turkeys. It's too much.
So how did it
Well,
turn out?
It turned out wonderfully well. We
How many years did you raise turkeys?
Oh, well, we started in 1942, and I guess we raised them till we went to BYU in 1954.
So
After
for 12
that-
years.
After that first year, we thought the turkey business was so good that we would keep a few of the turkeys to lay eggs, and we'd sell
So yes.
sell the eggs to start the next year.
Well, we had
So
two.
we did that.
We had 2 businesses actually. We had a government man come out and ban the turkeys, and he banned about 250 of the best hens and so many of the best. And so we raised turkey eggs, sold them, and they averaged about 25 cents a piece. And so we did very well on those 2 businesses. Then we'd kill off the hens and get the new poles. So we had our money in the spring from eggs and hens, and then in the fall before Christmas we'd sell a big flock.
So it turned out to be very financially rewarding.
Very
Oh
good.
yes,
Very good.
we paid for our quarter section, the 2 quarters with those turkeys in about 6 years, and then turkey wages or prices went down, and school teachers' wages came up. So when Bill Blackmore came out and said, "Why don't you come back to school teaching?" He told me how wonderful it was. So I said, "I'll think about it." But the next day I called him, I believe it was, and said I'll do it. So
And what year was this?
1953, it was the fall that Brenda was born.
Oh.
So, and it was the time, he had asked Gervais to teach too, and Gervais had a degree in agriculture, but he couldn't teach. Didn't have a degree in education, so he explained that. So we sent Gervais to Edmonton to go to school. His wife and her 5 children came down and lived in our basement. And she and I had these 10 children between us. We
And I
took
went
care of
to
things while
Hills-
he went to Hill Spring to teach school.
Which is
get
about
enough money to
25
keep
miles
him
away.
at university and keep things going at home, turkeys laying eggs and so forth.
Now, let me ask you a question. I'm kind of a World War II buff. I was wondering, I know was Canada involved in World War II?
I should
Oh,
say.
yeah.
How did it affect you, given the fact that you were young during those years?
Well, it didn't. It might have affected me differently than it did, but after Grant asked me to come home because he'd got his call, I said finally I would. And 2 days before school let out, guess what? I got my call to go to the service too. So there'd be 3 of us, Gervais and Grant and I, all in the service, and Father there alone on the farm. When I got home, J.Y. Card, thank goodness, said, "You can't go and leave your dad alone on the farm. I'll get you out." So he did. He made arrangements for me to not have to go to the service, but go back to the farm.
Okay,
That's why we lived with our folks for a couple of years while we were building a home.
Okay.
So
And
much for building a home.
Well,
Uncle Grant,
so-
Uncle Grant was killed. Uncle Gervais came home.
What
See,
happened?
they were, well, he was a bombardier flying over Germany, and they just got too much flak one night. They got back with the plane, but Grant was severely wounded and died before they landed. 5 of them bailed out, but Grant, the story that some of the people on brought back with them, 5 of them were saved, and the story that they brought back was that Grant was a co-pilot, and he said, "You jump out, I'm too badly wounded, I'll take it as far as I can go, and the rest of you bail out." So they did, and he died in a crash. That was the story that they brought back.
Wow.
And then did something
He's-
else happen afterwards? Didn't someone see
Grandpa.
him?
Okay, Grandpa at home. Who was he with when he saw Grant?
Well, they brought the word to the church that he had been killed, and Father Cahoon was sick that day. He'd stayed home from church, and
Jay and Lloyd Cahoon had come up from Cardson. They got the word there that Grant had been killed, and they stopped at the church and told us. And then they went over to tell Father because he hadn't been to church that day. And as Father opened the door, he saw Grant and Jay and Lloyd standing there in the doorway. So he said, "You don't need to tell me." Well, he knew that he'd been killed. So, what's that got to do with turkeys and nothing?
It's just part of
well, it's part of our
Interesting side
life.
note. Absolutely.
That was the beginning of the turkey farm. We went and worked on the farm till we got our lovely home built, and
Then you taught school. You sent Uncle
Well,
Gervais to
and-
school.
And he taught in Hill Spring that year.
sent Gervais to university. Then I came home
And Gervais and Joyce moved into our home. Leon said, "If I'm going to teach school, I'm going to get my education." He didn't have his degree. And so Gervais, we asked him if he would come down. He wanted to come down and stay in our place. Now, we'd helped him go to school. He was going to help us. He came down, lived in our house, and took over. He taught school then. And Leon and I and 6 children went to Utah to go to school.
BYU.
We were down there for 2 years and finished off his bachelor's degree and got his master's degree in those 2 years.
Cool.
And then we came home.
You can't believe that, and they didn't believe it either at the line. They said, you can't get your master's degree this year. It takes 2 years. And I said, why not? I've already got my master's thesis written and all the requirements done. Why can't I? And they checked everything and said, well, guess we'll have to let you do it. So I got my master's degree that year. Had a chance to teach school there in Utah, but I thought I'd better get back home and take care of things. So we went back to Alberta, and I taught school in Mountain View for 4 years.
I was the principal of the Mountain View School for 4 years, and then they moved the Mountain View School into Cardston, and he came to be the principal of the Levitt School for a few years. And they moved it to Cardston. They were busing everybody to the big centers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a matter of taking a school 40 miles from home or going elsewhere, and it was time for our kids to go to university, so we thought we'd go to Edmonton and they could go to school from home. And we moved to Edmonton, and then all the kids wanted to go to BYU.
So you
Of
have
course. Crazy kids.
We had a good life in Edmonton. It was a good move. We had a great time.
What year did you move?
63.
60 year I was born.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And in 1979, that was That was when I'd reached the time of retirement. Let's see what happened that year. I had a bout with cancer. I was in the hospital for a month or so, and finally when the stake president, I was in the High Council at the time, the stake president said, as soon as you're able to, come to the High Council meeting and we'll give you a blessing. 12 men stood around a circle and gave me a blessing. He said that I would live till I finished all the work the Lord had for me to do. So
you still got some work to do,
I went
obviously.
to work. I went back to school, and as soon as they found out that I'd gone back to school, they said, anybody with cancer can't come back that soon. Anyway, they got a substitute for me, and I went home, and they paid me, a little bit of, what did they call it? Part of a salary, anyway, that year. And at the end of that year, it was time to retire, so I retired. You know what retirement means? That's when you're tired twice. So I've been retired ever since then.
Okay.
You left out a lot of years, though, didn't you? We had a wonderful
But
life
the
raising
day
our
after
kids
I'd
and-
retired, the bishop called us into the office, the end of that school year, and said, are you ready to go on a mission? What could we say but the affirmative? Sure, we're ready. So that's when we started our mission. I thought we were going to tell about
Well, we will.
on ride
Sure
morning.
we
Finish
will. Sure we will.
Let's tell a
we'll
little
get
bit
all
about
of it.
your missions and up until
Yeah.
now, and then we'll go back and talk about this. Tell us about, your missions.
Well, our first mission was to the northern states again, where I was in my first mission, but it was a different locality. Where was the
Now called
headquarters?
Independence, Indiana.
Independence.
Independence? I didn't mean
No,
Independence, I meant
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis is what I mean.
Indianapolis, Indiana mission.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had a lovely time
Tell
there.
us about who you met there and baptized and what's happened
Oh
with them.
my.
Go ahead
You
and
don't
tell
tell who we
one of the
baptized?
neatest
Oh,
couple
well.
in the world. We met there, the Hatterleys, Bob and Mary Hatterley. We'd met, and
Tell them how we met.
we were just knocking on doors, and we met
Out in the
beautiful,
country, knocking on doors.
lovely young girl, and visited with her for a while, and proposed that we teach her the gospel. She said, no, I'm not interested. I have my church. But we were so impressed with her. She said my dad and mother are building a new home there right next door. We stopped in to see them as we left her, and we thought, or didn't we meet them that day?
No,
Oh, we
they
did.
were
You better tell the story.
they were building a new home, and they were running cement that day. And we decided not to go in there, so we went next door, and that's where we met Kathy. And we thought anybody that has a sweet girl like that has got to be good people. We'll come back to that house. So we did. A week or two later, and Bob happened to be home, and he said he had a feeling when we came up that walk that we were people he'd like to meet. Anyway, he invited us in, showed us through his home, and we made an appointment to come and teach them. So we went back and taught them a lesson, and we lost them for about 6 months. They went down to Florida to be with his mother for the winter, and we never got to teach them for about 6 months. And then when we went back and finished the discussions, they were a joy to teach, and we just formed a good relationship right off. But anyway, they have just completed a mission to Nauvoo.
Wow.
They just had a
Just got
wonderful
home last
experience.
last month.
But you want to know who we baptized in Indiana?
I was
Well, there
thinking
was
of them
Goldie.
specifically.
Goldie, who was owned a health food store at the time, and she had a problem. She was going through a divorce, and finally we were able to get to talk to her and baptized her. And then when she had been in the church a little while, we couldn't get anywhere with her little 16-year-old daughter. When she saw us coming, she'd run. So when she was baptized, she moved out to Utah. She wanted to get out of Crawfordsville. And we found out, she went out and stayed with Joy and Phil for a week while she looked for a house. And she found a home. When we got the address, we wrote to her bishop. And we told him we were sending him a fine, newly baptized member. And she had a 16-year-old daughter. And if she ever joined the church, it would be her peer group that brought her in. So we suggested to him that he send his strongest member, youth, to meet her when they arrived. And he did. And it was about Valentine's time, and they brought her a Valentine cake and invited her to MIA. And we wanted her to make the right friends before she had a chance to go to school and make some other friends. So that's what happened, and she was baptized in April. So we were thrilled with that. That worked out well. Then we baptized a young couple named Yolanda and Bill Query. We told them when we're tracting them, Yolanda, you need to know that we're building a church right down on the corner next to
2
you.
blocks from where they lived.
And we said, you'll want to raise your children in that church. And we talked to her about it and made appointments to teach them. Anyway, they were baptized, and since then they've had 2 more children. And there was a family. The mother had been a member all her life. The father was alcoholic and hadn't joined the church. We finally, after about 5 months of driving 20 miles every time we gave him a discussion, finally baptized him, and bless his heart, he's been a wonderful saint in the church.
Breedlove was his name.
Bob
and He
Breedlove.
was a loving person.
And
He
after
just died last year.
just recently, but after they built the new church, he became the caretaker in the church, and he taught a primary class. Just a lovely old man, and took his invalid wife and went to the temple in Washington, D.C. And there was a young man dating the branch president's daughter, Joe Foy, and we taught him the discussions and baptized him. He's a fine lawyer now out there raising a lovely family with the branch president's wife, or branch president's daughter.
Who was the couple we baptized and took to the temple after they'd been in? What was their name?
Runyon.
Runyon, brother and sister Runyon. We baptized them, and
They had
after they'd been in for a year, we took them to the temple in Washington, that beautiful temple as you drive around the corner. There've been so many car accidents there because people going around the corner would see that building and they run into each other. Anyway, we took them to the beautiful Washington Temple.
And they had 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, were sealed to them. And the Wrights, one of a girl who is a good friend of the Runyon's daughter, we went and taught her family and baptized that 3 people. And then there was another woman that was less active in the church, and she had a good friend, Joanne Caldwell. We taught and baptized her, and her husband wasn't, Pat's husband wasn't a member of the church. Tom Fulford, and we baptized him. Anyway, we had a good experience in Indiana. That was a great mission. We worked just like the young missionaries. We went tracting, and we taught, did the things that they did, had to make our reports just like they did.
Enough of that.
Okay, well, just tell the rest of the missions where you went.
Oh,
You don't need
just
to go on.
briefly. Just
Winnetka,
name the missions.
we came home from Indiana.
Now that was a 2-year mission, right? To Indiana? Okay.
A year and a half.
A year and
No, year and a half is all
Okay.
the couple missions are.
Okay.
We came home from Indiana and we worked in the temple. Ted Tuttle at that time was the president of the temple in Provo, and he had been in the mission field with Leon.
Now is that Theodore Tuttle?
Yeah,
Now why is that a familiar name to me?
because he was
He was one of the general authorities in the Quorum of 70.
Okay.
At that time, he was temple president. When he saw us, he grabbed us, said, "Come on into my office. I want to talk to you." Asked us if when he found out we were going to be there for 2 or 3 months, asked us if we'd work in the temple. We said, surely we would. So he arranged to have us set apart as temple workers.
We worked there that winter, and then we went home for the summer because Hadderleys would be in the church a year, and they came to Cardston to go through the temple with us. Then we went on our mission to Indiana, to Winnipeg. We were called to Winnipeg, Manitoba mission, and we were there for a year and a half, worked with the natives, taught school for 6 months to upgrade them to a grade 10 level so they could go on to trade schools and further education. Then we came home from that mission. That's when we went to Alpine and had our family reunion that summer that was so enjoyable.
Before we taught school, before they let us teach school, we had to sign the contract, and they said, anyway, they found out that I had a master's degree in this and this and so many years experience. They said, we haven't enough money to pay what you deserve, but we'll give you the highest wage salary there, which was, I forgot how much.
$29,900 a year.
So we went out with the man that took us up, who was the seminary, or the seminary teacher, institute teacher there in Winnipeg.
Happened to be my nephew, Kenneth Baker.
He knew beforehand what he was going to do, but anyway, we went out and discussed it. We went back to her and said, we'll be happy to accept your wage. They were apologizing because it wasn't enough, they didn't think. But we don't want to accept the money. We're out here on a mission, so if you'll just arrange to have our wages sent to the BYU for scholarships for deserving Indian students, and we'll accept your job. They couldn't believe it when we proposed to do that, but they finally gave in, and we had a lovely time teaching the Indians there at the college.
You had a time teaching the Indians.
We
Which is lovely.
didn't teach them
lovely
at the
time.
college. We taught them at Sakamay Reservation in a big Quonset hut, 100 feet long and 26 feet wide. And we were in one little corner up here. They played bingo in it at night, and we taught school in it in the daytime. But we got those kids through their grade 10, all but
Every one
2
of
of them.
Oh.
And they only had a grade 4 education to start with, but we really worked with them. And we had a couple of missionaries who had been called to help in the educational system in Saskatchewan, and they worked with Kenneth. in Regina, but they came out and helped us. Every Monday morning, they'd meet us at school, drive 100 miles and meet us out there at school and work with us. They were had both been teachers before their retirement, and they would teach English and math with Leon, and we could, with the four of us, we could give them a lot of help, these young people. And anyway,
Tell them about
then
our
on
graduation.
on Tuesday afternoons, they had another appointment, another reservation, so, but they'd stay overnight with us every Monday night and work with us Monday and Tuesday till about 2 o'clock. But that was great. We formed a great relationship with them as well as the students. Then when we graduated them, we had all kinds of surprises for them, but they surprised us more than we did them. They gave us the band gave us a clock, and the kids gave us a plaque, and a pen and pencil or pen set, marble plaque. Let's see what else. Anyway, they gave us all sorts of treats. I spent days preparing food for that banquet. We told them to invite all their friends, their relatives, and their friends on the reservation, and they came out in great numbers. And for the program, we arranged to have the people who hired him, personnel directors of the Saskatchewan University Indian College. They came out to be the speakers, and we also had our district president and his wife and family, who were Métis people. Well, she was Tongan. But they came out to furnish the entertainment, and the little boys sang, he played the guitar, and they sang songs like Love at Home and I Am a Child of God, and then she dressed in her native costumes and did some dances. It was a beautiful evening. And then the main speaker was a man who had been a branch president of the Indian group in Regina, and he talked to them about the 3 things that we never could have talked about and gotten away with, the problems with the native people. He talked about the welfare system, about alcoholism, and immorality. The 3 things that he felt were the worst things that the Indian people have to contend with. So anyway, it turned out to be we honored them, they honored us. We ended up by giving them each a Book of Mormon with their name engraved in gold on it, and telling them why that book was so important to the Indian people. It was a great experience.
Okay,
Then
let's make a long story short.
Then we went back to, after that mission, we went back and worked in the temple in Provo for a few months, and then we were called to the Singapore mission.
We just drove home into Cardston one day after that. Met Bob Sackley, and he said, "Oh, I'm glad to see you. I'm just on my way to the Washington Visitor Center. Why don't you come and go with us?" And we said, "We will." And so but we can't go for 2 or 3 months. We had to go to Provo to take care of Joy, or who wants to?
Carol was having a baby,
Carol?
we wanted to go.
But we'll be ready to go in 2 or 3 months. So when the call came, it was not to Washington, it was to Singapore. And we asked them why not to Washington, and they said they've got their quota of people there, but we need you over in Singapore. So that's instead of
No. He said there are no openings in the Washington Visitor Center right now, so why have a couple sit around for 6 months waiting to go there when we need them over?
So we went to the Singapore mission, and the first thing we were going to work in Malaysia for 2 or 3 months, but the couple that were in India couldn't get their visas renewed, and our mission president sent us to India, so we worked there in India for 6 months.
In India for 6 months.
6 months.
And did very many people speak English there?
Oh, most of them.
The people in the
speak
city,
English.
but the people out in the villages. We had 3 villages to take care of,
Well,
3 little branches. And then
We won't go into detail there. We've worked after we
Where did you work in India? Not much.
Where?
Coimbatore.
Where?
Coimbatore down in the
Coimbatore,
south, the
India.
southern part of India.
Okay.
One important thing though to tell you, we got a letter from the mission president, who had got a letter from the church president, from a letter over in, where did they live?
Arabia.
Arabia. He joined a church over there, and he wanted his folks in down where we were working to hear about it. So the mission president got the letter from the church president and said, handle it the way you can. The mission president sent it to us and said, handle it the way you can. And so we got in a bus and went down to visit these people.
Nagarcoil, right on the very southern tip of India.
Had a lovely visit with his folks. His wife was still there, and he was working over in Arabia. But
We took books.
had a lovely
down to
visit
the-
there. So much for that. Where did we go next? Just mention them, and then we'll quit.
So you did 6 months in India.
We came home and we were home.
And then
Okay.
back, they finished, it was a 1.5 year mission, 6 months in India and the rest in Singapore, Malaysia.
So you did spend a year in Singapore?
Yeah, and
Oh, yes.
Wow.
But most of it was in not.
In India and Malaysia. We were in Malaysia twice. Started
That's
out in
right.
Ipoh, Malaysia, went to India, came back to Kuala Lumpur. And then we came home and we were home. So we then moved from Edmonton. We sold our home in Edmonton and moved to Cardston to live in my Aunt Hattie's house. And she was in an old folks home, and we spent a couple of years there working in the temple and taking care of 2 aged aunties, helping them a bit.
Then they closed the temple for renovations, and then we went to Salt Lake City to the church history department
Family
for
history.
family history mission. A lovely year and a half.
Worked
we
in
spent
records
there.
maintenance.
And so what did you do exactly?
We worked in records maintenance.
And what did that entail?
Corrected records.
Learn to use the computer.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So if I noticed, for example, that the IGI file was wrong, I would have sent a form to people like yourselves? Or when I
Well-
submitted information, it would go to people like yourselves?
Yeah,
Okay.
Or else
looked
they
up-
would find the mistake.
We corrected a lot of records.
Okay.
Okay, after that, then we went home and,
To,
well,
to retire
and-
and to behave ourselves.
no, but
But it only lasted a little while till
when they closed the temple for renovations, we went there, and then the temple was still closed when we got home, so we went to New Zealand. We were called to New Zealand.
For another
We
year and a
didn't
half?
apply for that mission, we just phoned and said we applied.
we got a mission.
For another year and a half, yes.
We got a call from the missionary department in Salt Lake asking us if we could
We
come
were-
a couple of weeks earlier than our mission call indicated. So we said yes. That was the mission. Oh, we had a 3-way conversation, the mission department in Salt Lake and us in Cardston, and he said the mission president in New Zealand is on the line now. Will you talk to him? And he told us what he wanted us to do, so that was nice, a 3-way conversation, and we were on our way to New Zealand then.
He wanted him to be the district president and wanted him to come early because he was releasing the district president appointment. Anyway, that's what we did for a year. He was district president there. He divided the branch that had been a branch for 45 years. And
A district
hadn't
president
grown
of
the
what?
Nelson district.
Okay, and how many wards or
Included-
branches were in that?
It just included Nelson and Blenheim, which was about a 2 hours drive.
Okay.
And then he divided the branch in Nelson, so he had 3 branches.
Been a branch for 45 years, and it just wasn't growing. They'd join the church, and then they'd not come to church anymore.
Then we found a good man to take his place, or we had Brother Sackley. Brother Sackley came from, he was in the area presidency, and we knew him well. He came over, we wrote him a letter and said, help. Anyway, when he was going through to Samoa, he phoned us and we arranged a fireside for him. And then he came again, we had him interview all of the priesthood members that were there for district president. They found one to take his job, the one that he had as president of the other branch, which sad. Anyway, we were in Nelson for a year, and then this other fellow took over the district, and the president sent us up to the North Island to finish our mission in Napier and Hastings area. And that was great to have that experience. Beautiful
Right.
people up there. And we came home, and since then, we've been gadding around, seeing our grandchildren.
And so what
Come
year
home
did
from
you
their
finally, I guess, what year did you come home off of that mission?
93.
Okay, so you've been pretty much busy since retirement, which happened in
79.
79 to 93. You spent pretty much most of that time doing missions.
We're still on a mission now, but our mission now is to our grandchildren for the rest of our lives, I think.
You know, the interesting thing is, the day of we received our call to New Zealand, the day of our 50th anniversary.
Wow.
And that week, Stephen, our oldest grandson, went into the MTC. And since then, we have the 10th missionary, and the grandson just went into the mission home a week or two ago. So since that time, we don't have to go on missions anymore. Our grandchildren are doing it for us. What we have to do is just encourage them and love them and tell them how
And
wonderful they
someday
are.
your great-grandchildren.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
indeed. But it's wonderful. We feel like Stephen set the example for them. And when he came home, at our reunion, just after he came home, we had a family reunion at Park City, and we had our own sacrament meeting. And Leon and I reported our missions, and Stephen reported his. And as I watched those kids' faces when he was giving his talk, I just knew that every one of them were determining to serve missions. They wanted to be like Stephen. And since then, we've had all of these kids go, and they're being such successful missionaries. It's the joy of our lives. We truly know what joy and rejoicing in our posterity means. We really do. They're wonderful kids. And what our great hope is that they will stay together, that they will always appreciate what each other does, their successes, rejoice in each other's successes, sorrow in our failures, and we'll all have some of those, but be a family, love one another. We are so delighted with each one.
To be an eternal family is the most important thing in life.
And we pray for that every day.
Enough of our missionary work.
That is a family heritage, though. Growing up in father's family, you helped Uncle Merve through school. He helped you through school. Then you helped Aunt Irita through school. Tell us about all the different helps in your family.
Ellen helped me at normal school, and so did the Rons. And when we went to BYU, we needed a little more help. We've all helped each other. That's what families are for.
Now, one of the greatest things that I'm grateful for in my life is the missionary system. All of I don't know where I would be today if it hadn't been for the fact that the early missionaries in the early days of the church went out to England and Scotland and Wales and taught the gospel to my ancestors, because that's every one of my ancestors come through the missionary program, and that's very important to us.
Okay, you want to know who they are and where
Sure.
they started? You tell about yours, then you tell about yours. You need a drink?
Well, one of the most important things about missionary work was, I guess, the fact that my great-great-grandfather was a neighbor to the prophet Joseph Smith when they lived in Nauvoo. And let me tell you just one little incident there that happened. Joseph Smith was going down the street, and my great-great-grandfather opened the door and said, "Come on in, Brother Joseph, and give my new son a name and a blessing." So the prophet Joseph went into Reynolds' Cahoon place and picked up the baby from the crib, and they gave him a name, and the name that was given was Mahanrai Moriankamer Cahoon, and he handed him back to to Reynolds and said, "It's just been revealed to me that this was the name of the brother of Jared, who was told by the Lord to build a boat to take the Jaredites over to America." So that was an interesting story. That's where things started for the Cahoons, I think. We've been associated with the leaders of the church. Our family has from the very beginning. Thank you.
Well, William Farrington was the oldest child of Reynolds, and I notice in his journal that he says that he joined the church in October of 1830. So they were some of the very first members of the church.
Wow.
If you want to read that story, it's found in Ether 2 and 8.
Okay.
Read a little bit of that.
Okay.
And now I proceed with my record. For behold, it came to pass that the Lord did bring Jared and his brethren forth even to that great sea which divideth the lands. That is one. Anyway, the Lord came again to the brother of Jared and stood in a cloud and talked with him. Anyway, that's the story of the brother of Jared. That's where our family gets connected with the Jaredites, because he had the same name as Mahanrai Moriankmer, who was leader there. End of story.
Well,
Well, there's a lot more of the story of the Cahoons, but
So your family is, where does your family come from? Switzerland?
My mother came from Switzerland. Her folks were baptized over in Switzerland. They moved to Manti. Don't know how my father, well, that's where he was born too. They got together in Manti. And he came to Canada with his brother, Uncle James C. Cahoon, to get a place to live up here. He was up here for 2 years. He got some land, and they had to build a home on the land in order to qualify to buy the quarter section. After he built a little home, a log house, he went back to Manti to get his sweetheart, who he promised to come back and marry. But when they got back to Manti, the whole town was under quarantine. They had an epidemic, flu epidemic. Schools were closed, churches were closed, the temple was closed. How was he going to get married? Forever? They got special permission to open the temple for 2 marriages. My dad and mother were married, one of those couples, and I don't know who the other couple was. And a day or 2 after, they packed up and came to Canada. And that's where the Cahoon family got started. End of story. We've been back to Manti several times.
we were there last week.
yes, indeed, we were. It was a beautiful occasion.
The same temple that my dad and mother were married in. And Carol and Rawl were married there. A lovely, beautiful temple. One of 2 temples that are still have the, what do they call it? Live session.
You want to hear about my grandparents, my great-grandparents?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about my father's parents, great-grandparents. The Roberries and the Jenkins were in the congregation that Wilfred Woodruff was responsible for teaching, and he went to Herefordshire by inspiration, and found that there was a minister there who was interested in, not satisfied with what he was teaching apparently. But anyway, he had an opportunity to teach in this church, and he baptized nearly the whole congregation. And the Jenkins and the Roberries were 2 couples, families there. And the Roberry girl was dating Jenkins' boy at the time, and they were married, and the 3 couples came to New Orleans and up the river to Nauvoo, went through all of the persecutions in Nauvoo, and came west with the Saints to Salt Lake City.
And the name were Jenkins?
Names were Jenkins and Roberries.
No.
Then anyway, then the Levitt family were in Quebec. They joined the church in Quebec, and grandmother Sarah Sturdivant Levitt has a lovely journal concerning that I'll get printed up and send you a copy. But anyway, they too joined the church. They went over to Kirkland and were there for a few years, and then on to Independence and up to Far West. They lived in Far West and went through all that persecution over to Nauvoo, and they came with the Saints to Salt Lake. And that's where Thomas, who was a little boy as they were traveling across the plains, met the Jenkins, that young Jenkins family, and Logan had a little girl, Charlotte, and they met and were married and became my grandparents,
Wow.
my great-grandparents.
At the time of the Hansmill massacre, was one of your relatives involved in that? Were they
No,
there?
I don't think so. But they were at Far West at that time. And so that takes care of the Thomas R. Levitt family, and their first daughter became my grandmother Baker. She married Sam Baker. And they, my great-grandfather, this Thomas R. Levitt that married the Jenkins, Annalisa Jenkins, her name wasn't Charlotte, her name was Annalisa Jenkins. And they came, Thomas R. and his wife came, well, he came with his third wife to Canada. He didn't come with my great-grandmother. Anyway, that's the story that I told you before, that he had the two wives that were good friends. They sang duets together and lived side by side, and he was married to both of these women. And they had lovely families. My great-grandmother, Annalisa, had 12 children, and the other woman had 9 and then died. And my grandmother, some of her children were married by that time, but she took care of, raised both families. And the father married a third wife, Hattie, and came to Canada with some of the first people that moved up there to Homestead. And after they'd lived there for a few years, had 3 children, Hattie was homesick. She wanted to go back to Utah. So she came back to Utah, and my great-grandmother went up to Cardston to be with grandfather. And after a few months, he got pneumonia and died, 56 years old. But his family had almost all immigrated to Canada by that time. My grandmother, Annalisa, and Sam Baker had 6 little children when they went up to Canada to live. And my grandmother, Baker, was a midwife there. She delivered hundreds of babies in that area.
Tell them about the monument that they've got in Levitt in honor of.
She never lost a mother, and she never lost a child.
Really?
She sat down one day and wrote down all the names of the children she had brought into the world, and she had a list of over 800.
She's responsible for me being alive.
She
She
delivered both of us.
Really?
Anyway, there's a monument on the corner of the church yard up there in her honor. She
Right.
went in, my grandmother, Baker. She went through all kinds of weather to bring babies into the world and to nurse. And we have some, I'll make a copy of her history. Aunt Alice, one of her daughters, wrote a nice little history about her. And I'll send that to you too.
That'd be very interesting.
They have a monument to Thomas R. Levitt, wasn't it? Who immigrated to that area, and they named it after him, that area. That's why Levitt is the name of the place.
They now have a plaque on the road just down from Uncle Hervey's telling about him. That's that part of the family. And my mother's family, the Richards and the Bells. My grandmother was Janet Bell, and her parents joined the church. I think it was 1867, and they came as immigrants to Salt Lake.
Where did they join the church at?
Glasgow,
Oh, in Scotland.
in Scotland. And then, and Grandfather Richards, his parents joined the church in Swansea, Wales, and they immigrated. He was a branch president. Records I found in Salt Lake College there, he was a branch president in Swansea. But anyway, they came with the immigration fund to America, to Salt Lake, and then and settled in Cache Valley. And Grandfather was a young man working on the Logan Temple, helping to build that when he met my little grandmother, who was a few years younger than he was, about 9 years, I think. Anyway, they were married and went to Malad, and then finally found their way up, and then they settled in Kalispell area in Montana, but there was no church there. So because of the church, they moved up to Etna, Alberta, and my mother was about 9 years old when they moved up there. And she had 12 children. My grandmother Baker had 11, 10 girls and 1 boy. That boy is my daddy. Now that brings us up to date. I have 5 brothers, and I'm an only daughter.
Wow.
Leon had
2 sisters and 7 brothers. 6 brothers. So there were 7 boys in the family. End of story.
Well.
That's the 3rd ending of the story, or the 4th or 5th.
Of course, we could talk all night.
Well, feel free if you like.
No,
There's so many stories about fun things you did as kids, and the faith-promoting stories of the grandparents and great-grandparents.
Yeah, it's too much.
They're recorded other places.
I'm going to write my history someday and put a lot of that in there.
When are you going to do it?
Tomorrow.
No, I don't think you're going to make candy tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah, you're supposed to make candy tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow's the day we're going to do all these things that we've been going to do for years. Tomorrow. Anyway.
Want me to turn it off?
Yes, I would think so.
Oh, I really
She wants to say something off the record.
No, I just think that it's too bad to waste the battery to
we're not
just
using
We're not
Yeah.
using battery. He's got it
We're plugged
in.
in directly
but,
to the wall.
but don't waste
I'm
film to
curious
just
to know
chit-chat.
what you've got there. Let's see what it is.
Oh, you want to see it? First of all, you have to give a kiss, and I'll zoom in.
Oh,
Give me one.
oh, that's not difficult. Which way do you want to go? This way?
I told these
50
two
years.
they ought to practice, and they said,
Perfect.
no, we're real good at kissing. We don't need to practice. For their wedding.
Okay, I'll turn it off now. Okay, what were you going to tell me?
I was going to tell you about my great-grandfather, Simon Baker. He was a young man married to a lady named Mercy, and they had 8 little children, and they lived across the river from Nauvoo. And Mercy died. She didn't recover after the birth of her last child, and so 2 or 3 weeks later she passed away. Well, he was distraught. Here he was trying to make a living on a little farm, trying to get ahead, and had 8 children and a new baby. So he went to conference, and he asked the brethren where he could find a wife to take care of his children. He needed a wife. And they referred him to a Sister Levitt who lived in Nauvoo, who had a daughter. I think she was about 27 years old. And she hadn't married. Her mother was widowed, and she lived with her mother. I'm not sure, but I think she was a school teacher. But anyway, he approached her and asked her if she would marry him. He needed a mother for his children. And she said, well, Brother Baker, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go home with you and I'll take care of your children. And if I like you, I'll marry you. And if I don't, you can pay me for my services. So she did. She got ready and went home with him that afternoon. And as they were crossing the river, I guess she liked him, because they decided to be married on the boat. The captain could marry them. They wouldn't need a marriage license. They
So
weren't in either state. And so they were married on the boat. And
Before
when
she met any of his children.
before she met any of the children.
So she'd known him now for 2 hours?
A few hours, yes.
Okay.
But as they got near the home, here were little kids on the wood pile and on the top of the house or wherever, and they all came running saying, "Mama, mother, mother," or "Mama, mama." You know, they were. He told them he'd bring home a mother, and he did.
Wow.
So she raised that family, and then she raised a big family of her own.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing. And this
And
was
they
her-
crossed the plains with all of those children.
Wow.
Mm.
So now you've got the 4 couples of my great-grandparents, a bit of their stories.
Well, that's great. See, those are stories that you don't always know. I mean, had you not told us, they would have just been, names on a pedigree chart.
Yeah.
Now when we look at the pedigree chart, we can say, hey, these people were married while crossing the river on a boat.
I've
They
got a
only
little
knew each
more.
other 2 hours.
I've got a little more information about Simon Baker than that. But they were related. They were related. My grandparents, let's see, my grandfather's name is Samuel Levitt Baker. And Ann Eliza Levitt, his second wife was Charlotte Levitt. And her father was a brother to Thomas R.'s father, Jeremiah. They were brothers. And these were married. So my grandfather and grandmother were about third cousins.
That would explain Amy.
How bright she is.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
That's
She got the
exactly
good genes of all of those good people.
Well, heck, and Amy and I thought that we had rushed it. Because we got engaged within 6 weeks of dating.
But now you know that you've been...
No, we did it a long time. We're engaged for 5 whole months.
Is that being recorded?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Oh, no.
Recording your beautiful wife.
You should have had that turned off after.
Okay, well, do you want to say anything else?
No, I'm finished.
Oh,
I've been
please.
finished several times.
Ah, well,
The fun thing is to turn it on before they think that they're being recorded.
Billy?
Yes.
And when would that be?
When would that be? When they think they're all finished and then we start talking and they come up with new stories.
Well.
Then you want to be recording it.
We're done recording, Tressa, so
I'm glad.
just tell us
So
something.
now I can relax.
Say something embarrassing about yourself. This isn't on.
You see, I could go on all night because I could tell stories about each one of the children. I'm
Well,
sure
do.
you'd
That's a
like
good one.
Do.
That's a good one.
Do.
He's been wanting to find out the
Do.
nitty-gritty on this family.
midnight and knew I had to go to the hospital. And I suffered through till morning to break the news to anyone else rather than alarm anybody. But they couldn't get me to the hospital till they loaded a load of pigs to take in so it wouldn't waste a trip. That's actually what happened.
So in other words, I could be a pretty bad husband, and I'd still be better than Leon.
Well, that bad husband sold the
before you
pigs,
take
bought
me.
some lumber. She was still
No,
with me.
It was paint. I sat down there in
Paint?
Lloyd's lumber yard and ordered the paint for
And
that
so
house
I-
before I'd go to the hospital.
Promised her before I would go home, I'd take her to the hospital. And
Well,
so
it'd
I
take-
did.
It had taken me 36 hours to get David after labor started, and I expected the same sort of deal with her. So I went to the hospital about 11 o'clock, and she was born at 1.
Didn't take long.
A little after 1, I guess I waited for Ma Perkins to be over on the radio before I went in.
That's like a soap opera on the radio.
Anyway,
So he didn't
she's
want to
been-
waste time having a baby. He had to get his load of pigs in, not to waste a trip. She had to watch Ma Perkins fit it in during a commercial.
But we got you. Your Uncle Grant saw you before he did. Uncle Grant came to the hospital.
And wanted to name me
And that
what?
was, he wanted to name you Thurza. He said, "What are you going to name the baby?" And I said, "I don't know. We haven't decided." And I said, "I guess I'll have to let you name her." And he went over to Uncle James C's, went through the genealogy, and found out that Reynolds Cahoon's wife's name was Thurza, and she was born on a Thursday. And he thought that would just be neat. And when he told me, oh, I couldn't name my baby Thurza.
Instead, she named her Tressa.
So,
So,
I named her.
How did you
That's
come up with
right.
Tressa? Was it a
Tressa.
derivation of Thurza?
Well, I got thinking what I could name her, and I remembered hearing Leon talk about a girl that he knew in the mission field named Tressa Anderson. And she sounded like a pretty neat lady.
So I'm named after
And
my
the
dad's
more
old
The
girlfriend.
more I thought about it, the prettier the name sounded, so I decided to name her Tressa. Anyway, whatever I named her, it was all right.
You turned out okay.
I'm here.
Grant, I'm sure Grant forgave me. He was good.
That's true.
Okay, you can turn it off now.
You think so?
We'll push down and make a leak on the bottom of your chocolate if you don't have a second thing. So that's what we do.
Okay, so what are you doing? Repeat it again. You're smearing little dabs of chocolate on the wax paper.
That's right. That's what you're doing to reinforce the bottom of the chocolate so that it won't leak. Because the weight of the chocolate will come through and make a leak on the bottom if you don't have them reinforced. Okay, that should do it. Now, you feel... Now, don't ever pick your chocolate up like that. Get the chocolate over it.
Okay, so what are you doing?
But don't ever pick it up with your fingers that way. Keep the thumb clean and wipe the hand off after the chocolate's in. Pick it up with those 2 fingers. Wipe the backs of the fingers so that when you put it down, it doesn't roll down the side. You can move another finger back if you like. And don't let the chocolate, don't put it off this way or it'll roll down and you'll have a chocolate mess over the side. Okay.
This is complicated.
There you go.
So you just pick them up now?
Uh-huh.
Which hand are you going to use? Your left hand?
I use my right to do this.
Ooh, what a messy.
Ooh, that's Amy with
I
her
lost
fingers
it.
in the
Amy's
mud.
doing just fine. You leave her alone and she'll just...
And she learned to do
That's
that when
right,
she was a
that's right.
child in the mud box.
That's
Oh,
right, and I can see already that she's going to do
I'm going to
just
be a
fine.
master dipper.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Now, if the fondant's awfully soft, it's going to want to...
Oop, is she messing it
rub
up?
your fingers. She's
No,
doing just fine.
That's her first chocolate
That's
dip.
Perfect!
There it is.
Yay!
It looks
December
different than the other
26th.
ones.
No, it doesn't.
Almost
Oh, it
perfect.
does not.
It's perfect.
December the 26th at,
My first chocolate experience here.
at 4:48 Central Time.
That's fine.
That tradition is,
Tradition is born
no, it's
Exactly.
carried on. This was born a long time ago.
in the McDonald family.
Ah,
And let's hope the Mackenzies or the whoever else's don't know how to dip chocolates.
The Campbells.
Campbell's.
Campbell's.
I don't think they do they?
Nah, they're too treacherous. They can make soup, and any vegetable
Amy,
can
you're
make soup.
wonderful. She
She's
does
got
the
two
best
perfect.
job of anybody I've ever trained.
I'm a
to
natural.
make-
She's a natural.
I found her quite easy to train. Just a second, do that again, Amy. You look very sexy when you do that.
Yeah, just what? So there.
Now, if Emily was here, we'd have to have our hairnets on.
Oh.
And
do you mean
Tressa,
if
what else would
Emily
we have
was
to
here?
have?
I brought hairnets, and we used them at Carol's, not hairnets. I've got little caps that you wear. But I searched through my suitcase
Come on,
this
get off
morning,
there,
and
get
I
off there.
left them all at Carol's.
Ooh.
Yeah, 3 for 3.
I'm 3 exactly. I'm 3 for 3 now.
What, honey?
Now, let's get over here to the prep.
So
Who's
stay
doing
up
all
here
the-
with us. Come over here and see what Amy's doing.
See, now already the
Come on.
battery is low. So this battery is,
There's something wrong with the battery.
Not mine. I'm plugged into the wall.
Where's
Do I have
ours
too
that
much
plugs
chocolate
into
on my
the-
fingers when I'm
Well,
doing
no,
this?
you've got, yes, when you put it up, you've got to,
Yeah, it's different.
but you're doing just fine.
Okay, I can't really hardly see what you're doing now because you're doing it on the other side.
I'm sorry.
Oh, just a second.
Tressa, what are you doing?
So the fondants.
Well, I'm rolling the fondant.
The Tressa's rolling them up. Tressa, there she is. Stick out your tongue, smile.
I need to check to find out what kind, so that she doesn't
Are
make
you
the same
taking a bite
design
out
on
of each
this.
one?
Well,
You gotta run down your fingers there, I think that's the thing. Oh, you, go ahead and finish it up because it's soft and it's going to,
Does this remind you of nursing in the MICU? Sticking your fingers into a big old messy thing and
No.
pulling stuff out?
I try not to remember those times. Okay.
Okay, now where do all the flavors come from? That's the fondant, isn't it?
you make
The nuts,
We
the
put-
creams, the cherries, the whatever, all that.
we put the flavors in the fondant after it's made in one big puddle and we just divided it.
So the fondant is one like middle thing, and then you divide that up and make different flavors out of it.
yes.
You beat the candy and the fondant all.
It was one big
Now that's
bunch,
getting
and
a
we
little
divided
bit
into these.
heavy, isn't it?
Yeah.
A little bit hard to handle.
She makes
Okay,
one
I think we're
mistake,
going
doesn't
to-
she?
Don't you have to heat that up again now, or something?
We've got to just stick this in for just a
Ooh,
second.
just a second, let me zoom.
Now what I want to do is the finger licking. That's what I want to get
So
here.
if it gets too thick, then you just heat it up a few seconds.
Mmm,
What mistake
candy.
you're making?
No, what's that?
You turn, let's see, you turn this way instead of that way.
There, see?
Oh, I should go the other way.
I don't know that it makes a bit of difference, but I just compare you to
Goes the
one
other
another.
way, huh?
There's the proof right there, folks.
But I noticed you went that way,
I
and
have to start going the other way.
I don't think they'll taste the same.
What's she
but
doing, darling? I'm making the swirls on counterclockwise instead of counterclockwise. Oh,
They
She's
will taste
developing her own
differently, don't you think?
it's
They will.
freestyle. It's
Freestyle, yes.
artistic freestyle candy dipping.
Okay, so what's Grandma doing over there?
She's warming up the chocolate, just a trifle. I don't want it.
We're making trifles now.
She's the fussiest lady in the world.
You got
Chocolate has to be just so.
I have no idea
This
what
what,
has to be
honey?
just so.
It's like, I want to get you on camera. Now say your wife isn't perfect.
But you
My
can all have
wife,
yourself.
if I'm on camera,
Come
I'll
over
say
here and
she's
see what we're
perfect. But
What was that you were saying about fussy?
but there was one thing that has to be perfect.
So then you just do it until it gets
She's a wonderful woman. Everything has to be
it's
just so.
less.
Okay.
So how do you heat that up? Just plug it in again?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take any more than that, huh?
No.
You don't get it all the way warm.
Oh, that's not
Honey,
very
I don't
warm at
want
all.
you
I
to be down
thought
there
it
by
almost be hot
yourself.
to
Stay
the
up here
touch.
and color.
You scorch the chocolate
What's
and then
that?
it ruins it all.
Now you
Well,
can
don't
do that
have to
sitting
even
down.
scorch it. You
Amy.
just get it too
What?
hot and it.
You can do that sitting down. So
Well,
that,
but it's.
Oh, really?
no, but when she gets
Oh,
No,
yeah.
you
used
can't.
to it and stuff, it is something.
You have to be
Get
standing
all
up.
organized
You
and
need to be up above it, kind of. I've been standing up mostly to do mine lately. It's just easier. You get your 2 feet planted under you, you can stand all day.
Mm.
Takes a
My
lot of
back would
balance.
be killing me in about
Well,
15
that
minutes.
depends on how you stand, Jim.
The counter would have to be about that high.
Goes past the door.
Yes, it's a little bit high.
Do you want to come over here and see what we're doing?
Keep your fingers out straighter. Yeah, that's fine.
This is going to be late or something.
And yeah, you've got a good way to tip it straight up and don't let it run down this way. Some of them let the candy drop off their hand that way and then the chocolate runs down off their fingers onto it and it's a mess.
Have you ever
She's
seen the
doing
machines do
very
it?
well.
Shouldn't you be making some jokes like Julia Childs or something?
Doing what?
There's not enough mess in here for Julia Child. The whole kitchen isn't covered in chocolate.
She doesn't have it all across her face.
Yeah,
Oh.
all around. That's the biggest joke ever.
I'd lick her off though.
She's one of those famous chefs
Chefs on TV.
who always, she cooks with wine, and as she cooks, she always takes a drink. So by the time she finishes,
She's half south.
she's pretty much drunk. But I think
And she
that's what
licks
makes
her fingers and
Oh, really?
takes a,
Oh, and she's just famous.
and then puts the rest of the spoon back in the.
Oh, she really is. She's very, very famous. But
So you just have to wonder about eating in her kitchen, I guess.
It isn't a drink of water that she
You
takes.
know what? We're going to need more chocolate. I can see it's going to be too bad not to dip all of this, and there's sure quite a few of those.
now, what kind of chocolate is this? Just stuff you buy at the store, or is it
No,
special?
We got this from Carol.
Dipping chocolate.
And is it?
I don't know if you can buy dipping chocolate, can you? Or you can buy that kind of compound, I think.
This is the kind you buy over at a craft store that they make candy.
Yeah, with the,
Do you want to run over to Frank's and get some more?
Well, they wouldn't have this stuff at Frank's.
Yeah, they do.
Frank's is just
No,
crap.
that's
It's not
They
candy.
have candy. And they make it stuff.
How do they do the chocolates? I mean, the cherries, so that you bite into it and it's still liquid inside. I mean, how do they?
you,
Do 'em
you
frozen?
do the same thing. You just wrap the cherry in the fondant. There's something in that liquid in the cherry juice that after a week or two it will make the fondant softer.
Dissolve, huh?
Oh really? So it's hard at the time that they roll them.
I think so. I've heard some that use an epidermic needle and they squirt a little something or other in there, glycerin or something that makes it do
Be
that.
interesting to
Well,
see
Amy
if
can
the
get
machine do
those.
this. Well, you know, I mean,
Few
We're not gonna-
hypodermic
and the chocolates
needles.
are.
Carol just does hers that way. She uses the plain fondant, maybe with a little almond.
Well, I'm
or
saying it'd be more
vanilla in it.
interesting to see. You're not buying
Eating his
gold
goldfish.
chocolates in the store that are cheap that are hand dipped.
No?
They're all done, aren't they? Aren't they? Don't they
You're
machine?
putting
Oh,
it
yeah.
on
Stuff
the
you
Most
for
chocolates
mass.
you buy
Of course
would be
I am.
machine
Yeah, that's what I like to see the
Boy, they're
machine,
delicious.
mechanical.
Oh good.
way that-
I do too.
best fish I've ever eaten in my life.
There you go.
Oh, just a
You
second.
want to just taste a
We're gonna
fondant?
zoom in on a fondant.
Oh, I was going to put it in your mouth.
That is a fondant.
Put your mouth over here.
Oh, I was gonna zoom in on it, but then my mouth would get on camera.
Get your mouth on camera and the expression on your face, how wonderful that is.
Mmm, it's good.
What kind is it?
A little more expression there, please.
Ooh, mmm.
There.
Oh, that's really,
Tastes like chocolate.
really good.
Orange, right?
That's orange.
It's really nice when they can figure out what the flavors are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always said
Can't smell and
pepper.
can't taste. I think that did pretty good.
For a guy that can't smell, you're doing fine.
Okay, that's one of those. These are the coconuts, so that when you get to the orange, you can change the design.
Oh, I've just been picking them all from
She's
everywhere.
getting all on top of every one of those. You'll know the oranges.
Okay. Wasn't sure.
No, those are the coconuts she's doing.
I've been just picking them
Double
out.
check your watch.
Yeah,
so
what's
you
supposed to be
keep
different?
left.
I
We
thought
don't
it was
want
orange.
it. Oh,
I can't hardly see your
These are
hands do
these
it.
are orange. I think these are coconut.
That won't change
Oh,
the
are
taste
they?
of it.
Why?
Oh,
Is
but
that
it
why you
will.
put the O?
This
Oh,
is
but
your
it will.
coconut here.
Mm-mm.
That's
She
the orange.
went left.
Which ones are where?
Well, I don't
This
know what
is
I taste.
coconut.
Don't worry, Amy. Just dip them. Nobody.
And this is orange.
She's very inconsistent.
Who?
Well, we
Nobody.
are going to have more chocolate.
Well, Jim, pick up the phone and call Frank's. My hands are dirty. All right.
Ask if they have dipping chocolate.
Ask if they have any Christmas trees for 75% off.
You've got one. You don't need another one. Are these too big?
They're fine. She's handing them. I'm real
They
proud
are
of her.
beautiful.
I'm
They
just
are
proud of
just
myself here.
They're just.
I'm a candy dipping prodigy. That's who I am.
Carol does a little trick. She moves these two fingers and gets some of the chocolate off.
Does that?
Yeah. Now you need to watch that again.
Need more rhythm.
Put it back in.
No, don't put it
She's
back in.
the person.
I don't want that chocolate on your finger.
Oh,
Maybe get them closer to the end of your finger so you don't have all that chocolate there.
dripping up. Okay.
Let's see which direction she goes.
What's the matter with her direction?
Now the bed.
She's just wonderful. There you go.
There she lives, but she's usually turning right, and that's the direction to go.
I was under
Well,
pressure.
I'll tell you, if you want to know to do it right, you listen to Grandpa because he's had a lot of experience watching women dip chocolates.
A lot of experience telling me how to do it right.
How are you at dipping? Does he dip?
We tried once, but he gave up.
You don't like to dip, huh?
I didn't
He
even.
can't stand to have his hands in a mess.
I'm wondering how I handle that. I don't do well.
Well, it depends on what the mess is.
Amy and I don't mind.
I can handle a mess of chocolate.
Perfect.
Right.
Well, thank you.
She's doing much better than those two women I had over to learn how Saturday before we came.
Oh yeah.
And they made their own chocolates. They just said, I can't make mine look like yours. Will you show us what you do? They came over, we made the fondant. They couldn't make the fondant as smooth as mine. So they came over to see how to do it. And
What
we
were
did
they
it.
doing wrong?
I think it's
Sounds like everything.
But they were doing
Finish
well.
up the
But
coconut
Is it
syrup.
good? Is it getting thick
plenty, yeah.
to like heat up again?
You haven't got one in there.
No.
Do you want to mix it?
It's my hands. Oh, your hands are dirty too.
I want to try that time.
Just a second. Zoom in
In case I
on a
orange
fondant.
section.
Ooh, gross. What kind is that?
I don't know. Check it out.
You don't know what kind that is?
Oh, I know. Now, wait a minute. That's the coconut.
Mm-hmm.
So now, is this on?
Well, then what's this one?
Butternut?
So Amy's actually
that's
heating
what it is.
something in a
That's
kitchen?
butternut.
I just rub the bottom of the pan with your.
This never happens at
No,
home.
if you just rub it on.
I just turned it on for a minute.
Yeah,
Well,
just a couple of seconds. This is a chocolate one. This is maple
I
walnut.
can't tell what they are. Tell me what this is, Mom. Is that the butternut?
If the wages
This is
are high
butternut.
enough,
Hold
I
on, what's
can
this one?
tell you I'm a professional
This is
tasting
almond.
chocolates.
Almond.
Kind of a-
That was
yeah.
almond.
I've been
This is
addicted
coconut.
to it.
Of a
Okay, she's
chocolate
doing the
connoisseur.
almond.
It's a skill.
Now I'm doing almond.
It's a
You're
skill.
doing almond right now.
Too bad.
Hello? What am I doing?
Sprays.
What am I doing?
Who am I talking to?
They haven't answered you.
Do you have any dipping chocolate? Do you have any dipping chocolate there? Thank you.
Doesn't feel. It's still.
No,
it's
it-
kinda thick.
Yeah, but it's okay. If we get it too warm, then when they dry, they're going to turn grayish.
Oh, okay.
They won't be nice shiny chocolate. I'm going to turn this for you so that you can get
So what am I dipping now? Almond?
Yes. Yes. Do you have any dipping chocolate for tea? Okay, thank you. Do you usually carry it and just out? Okay, thanks. All right.
They don't carry it, huh?
No, but I know they carry those little colored.
They
colored
carry the
candies.
molds. Yeah.
Seems like we had a hard time here once.
Call some of the grocery stores.
Wonder what the pioneers had to do when they dipped chocolate.
Wonder if
Hey,
they got
Jim,
their
call
chocolate.
Deerbirds and ask them if they have any dipping
When they're
chocolate.
crossing the plains, how do you think they improvised in their chocolate dipping?
Where did they get their chocolate and how could they have Christmas with
They
it?
probably borrowed it
Dipping
from
chocolate.
Indians. Traded with Indians to get the fondant.
Quite likely.
I've never read that in church history yet.
Oh, you just haven't read the right books.
So
I'll write one.
I
I
can't
was just gonna
help
say,
you.
you haven't written it yet, have you?
Okay, so the process is, let me understand this. the fondant is like one normal thing. And then that's fondant there. This isn't flavored, right?
No, it's all flavored. We made it in one big batch, and then we separated it into little
Then you
batches.
separate it into like
And
four
flavored.
different
On the
dishes.
top, right?
All
And
these
then you
different,
added flavoring.
and
into-
worked it
That's why
in.
it's
Okay, so at the point now that you're working with it, it is flavored.
It is flavored.
It is a flavored
chocolate
fondant.
run down onto them, but there seems to be quite a bit of chocolate stringing off the end of your fingers before you start. I worry every time if that's going to.
Maybe my nails or something.
Are you wearing your ring? Oh, it's the other hand.
Yeah.
Chocolate just makes it
You have to
sweeter.
have the ring on the right hand to get chocolates. It don't taste right.
Exactly.
Let's see, what other
That's
What's this
right.
stuff called?
can I give?
Dipping chocolate?
Dipping chocolate. Candy dipping chocolate.
Hi, we're.
Remember,
doing some
you are what
chocolates
you
for
eat.
hand dipping some chocolates.
You are what you
Get
eat,
some
so
dipping
That's
chocolate.
right.
I guess we're a couple of dips.
So, they won't give me, excuse me now.
Oh,
See
okay.
that?
My book.
Roll down the
Okay.
side.
Yeah, that rolls.
Now,
Sorry?
I wonder what happens.
Yeah,
I
put it on
noticed
a
that
location in
sometimes
North County.
this one. I
You're down on
noticed that-
Chippewa, you're down in South St. Louis, right?
that when I
think you're down
feel
there
it
tonight. I just wonder if you knew
dripping
if
down or
there's something
something, I
north.
turn it up that way, and I get rid of that. And then so don't be afraid. Practice a little bit, turning it up and down. It's not going to drop
So show
off.
some Michael Gerber.
Juggle a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure, can I get 4 of them going at a time?
I think one's
Okay.
about as much as I can
I
handle
think
right now.
one will handle.
Okay,
One
thank you
will-
very much.
You know what? When you're done, you can use that excess
Okay, great.
chocolate kind of as like a facial mask.
Alright.
Soothing minerals. Let them
Turn it-
soak into your skin.
Turn it right upside down. Okay, now that chocolate fell back on your fingers. It's not going to roll off the side of your chocolate. Okay.
Okay,
Now
now
handle it too long and it's going to either run down over your finger or. Okay, that's beautiful.
Well, should we call Deerberg's?
Yeah, who did you just call?
Chocolate place down Clayton.
And
make
they didn't
chocolates.
have any. They didn't have any.
Well, they're not going to sell it to you. They sell you the finished chocolate. They're going to sell you the stuff to do it. Bakery, deli, where? Bakery.
No, just the
That's
grocery
upside down
store,
now.
not the
Yeah,
bakery.
Okay, that's great.
Just
Back
the
and
store.
forth a time or two to get that chocolate to stick on your hand instead of roll down the side of the
Do
chocolate.
you want, oh,
Okay, so how much
okay,
this should we
Scott, we
want?
need your help.
You need my help,
Oh, I
Yes.
think,
but I'm running the camera.
No, we need your help.
No.
you're not running that on me, I hope.
Right now? Of course not.
What I want you to do is go get a cookie sheet out of that lower oven and set it out here and put a piece of wax paper on it.
I need to find if you have some dipping
Mother's
chocolate.
got chocolate on her.
Okay.
We need some more chocolate too.
Let me just.
So I'm wondering if you know if you have dipping chocolate.
Okay, here, Scott. She wants to do that, so if you'll
Okay, so what do I do?
put wax paper on there.
Piece of wax paper on your
What, darling?
It's upside down.
finish this tray.
Did she walk past? Is there a car out there? Well, she'll be up in a minute then. She's
This is
gonna come and
upside
see how
down.
we make candies. Come and sit on this chair
Put
over
it
here.
upside down?
Yeah, so
Come
that we
sit.
can slip it off.
Come on, watch and see how Amy's making candy.
Okay, now, should I zoom in on this? Very
Oh,
important.
if you want to.
Wax paper. Ooh.
This is to make the double bottom.
Making the double bottoms so that the chocolates won't leak.
You should have been here for the whole candy process this morning.
Well, I
That's
wasn't
the
invited.
important part.
I wasn't invited.
Oh, is that why you weren't?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was doing guy stuff.
Computer stuff.
That and eating chocolates.
Yes,
Our
your
job
job
is
is
to
to
eat
eat
'em, right?
them.
Yes.
Our job isn't to make them, our job is to eat them.
We're more the consumers.
What,
See?
Justin?
Chocolate dipping would be a thankless job if not for your husbands that would eat them.
Right. We're just making them for our husbands. We don't very often eat them.
Okay.
Yes, huh?
I'm wondering how much chocolate dipping I need.
I think
That's
that,
enough.
Okay, tell your story.
well, when we moved to Edmonton in 1963, they were building a new church, a steakhouse. And my Aunt Hattie Jempson and Melba McMullen had organized a chocolate making
Yes.
to sell the chocolates, to make money to help build the church. We had to pay 70% of the cost of the building. So that was one little project that they started. It started out small. We started selling at the bazaars, the Relief Society bazaars at that time. And before long, we had the chocolates pretty well sold before the bazaar time. In fact, they would line up way down the street. Well, then it worked into a thing. Everybody got acquainted with Mormon chocolates, they were called. And everybody in the city wanted Mormon chocolates. At Christmas time, we'd make 6,000 pounds, and that's all we were allowed to make.
And then
Without
different individuals would
certain
take the orders home and
license.
finish the orders, didn't they?
Yes, they would take, a lot of people worked for the government, and they would go to their offices and take the orders and have those chocolates sold before we ever got them made.
Wow.
Then they quit having bazaars, and from then on it was just word of mouth. Mormon chocolates, have you eaten Mormon chocolates? Wow. Anyway.
So you make 6,000 pounds every Christmas?
That's what the church made, and there would be more orders than 6,000 pounds. So different families would take the orders home and just make them and fill them on their own,
Huh.
didn't they?
Some of the families just decided to do that too.
So they like private enterprise.
Yeah,
Cool. So you learned this art while building your chapel.
that's right. My Aunt Hattie said, "You're going to be a dipper. You're not going to carry the trays nor roll the fondant or anything else. You're going to be a dipper." So I sat beside her and became a dipper.
Oh, cool. And now this is the proud moment in which Amy, let me zoom in.
Amy is becoming a dipper.
Amy is a dipper.
She knows the whole
I'm not
project.
sure I would normally consider that a good thing, but
Ooh.
In this
Tressa,
case,
the only thing they're going to have is a block of
That's
lighter
okay.
dark chocolate, and you're going to have to melt it in.
Oh, well, we always
That's
have
what
to
we
do
do.
that. You can get lighter dark chocolate. Bricks of lighter
I
dark
guess it'll
chocolate.
be that Hershey stuff. It's like a big Hershey bar.
Yeah,
it's different.
Well, we got a pound of Ghirardelli at Dallas.
Okay, that's what we need.
the only other thing is to
Pound of
finish up
Ghirardelli.
what we've got here, and then if she wants to take the fondant home and finish dipping it, she'll do
we
it.
could dip it there too.
Cool.
Do you want to run over and get some?